The sun beat down on the festival grounds as I adjusted my sunglasses, taking in the vibrant sea of people flowing around me. Music pulsed through the air, a tangible force that seemed to connect everyone present in an invisible web of shared experience. My name is Alex, and I'd been looking forward to this weekend for months. The Harmony Fields Festival had the perfect lineup, with all my favorite bands scheduled to perform across 3 magical days. The colorful flags fluttered overhead, casting dancing shadows across the grass as festival-goers in bright clothing and glittering face paint moved from stage to stage. There's something about music festivals that creates a unique kind of magic, a temporary community where strangers become friends and the outside world ceases to exist for a little while. My best friend Jordan stood beside me, practically bouncing with excitement as we consulted the festival map. We'd been friends since high school, bonded by our shared love of indie rock and a tendency to overthink everything. The Midnight Echoes are playing in 20 minutes, Jordan said, pointing to the schedule on their phone. We should head over to the Sunset Stage now if we want a good spot. I nodded in agreement, feeling that familiar flutter of anticipation in my chest. The Midnight Echoes had been the soundtrack to some of the most significant moments of my life, and seeing them live felt like a pilgrimage of sorts. As we made our way through the festival grounds, I couldn't help but feel grateful for Jordan's presence. We'd been through so much together, breakups, family drama, career disappointments, and somehow, we'd emerged stronger for it all. Remember when we used to listen to their first album on repeat in your car? I asked, smiling at the memory of us driving around our small hometown with the windows down, singing at the top of our lungs. Jordan laughed, the sound bright against the background noise of the festival. How could I forget? You knew every word to every song. Still do, I bet. The crowd was already substantial when we arrived at the Sunset Stage, but we managed to find a decent spot about halfway to the front. The energy was electric, a palpable buzz of anticipation as technicians moved across the stage, adjusting equipment and running final checks. Around us, people chatted excitedly, some already dancing to the music playing through the speakers between sets. This is going to be amazing, I said, more to myself than to Jordan. Little did I know just how transformative this festival experience would become. Our friend group had expanded for the weekend. There were 6 of us in total, all connected through various overlapping social circles. Besides Jordan and me, there was Taylor, who I knew from work, Morgan and Riley, Jordan's roommates, and Casey, who Taylor had invited along. We'd all arrived together, pitching our tents in the designated camping area and creating our little festival home base. There's something special about experiencing live music with friends, about sharing those moments of pure joy and connection that only come from being present in the same space, feeling the same rhythms. The Midnight Echoes took the stage to thunderous applause, and immediately the crowd surged forward. I felt myself being pushed along with the wave of bodies, excitement temporarily overriding any concern about the increasing density of people around me. The lead singer approached the microphone, their voice carrying across the field as they greeted the audience. How's everyone feeling today? The response was deafening, thousands of voices merging into one enthusiastic roar. And then the music started, the opening notes of their most popular song, sending a collective shiver through the crowd. At first, it was manageable, everyone swaying and jumping in unison, a beautiful choreography of shared passion. Jordan was right beside me, singing along with every word just as I was. But as the song built to its climax, something shifted. The crowd became more frenzied, the gentle pushing transforming into something more forceful. I felt myself being moved by forces beyond my control, the space between bodies disappearing as everyone pressed forward, eager to get closer to the stage. Stay close, I shouted to Jordan over the music, reaching out to grab their hand. But in that moment, a particularly strong surge came from behind, and suddenly, Jordan wasn't beside me anymore. Panic flared in my chest as I scanned the sea of faces around me, none of them familiar. Jordan, I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the music and the collective voice of the crowd. I tried to push back toward where I'd last seen my friend, but it was like swimming against a powerful current, impossible and potentially dangerous. The realization that I was alone in this massive crowd hit me with unexpected force. It wasn't just about losing sight of Jordan, It was the sudden vulnerability of being separated from my anchor in this overwhelming environment. The music continued, oblivious to my personal crisis, as I tried to maintain my composure. I told myself that we'd find each other after the set, that this was a temporary separation, nothing to worry about. But the anxiety persisted, a dissonant note in what should have been a perfect experience. I focused on my breathing, trying to recenter myself and enjoy the music despite the circumstances. And that's when I felt it, a hand grasping mine firmly, a point of stability in the chaos. My first instinct was relief, assuming Jordan had found me after all. But when I turned, I found myself looking into the eyes of a stranger. He was about my height, with warm brown eyes that somehow managed to convey both concern and reassurance. "You looked like you needed something to hold on to," he shouted over the music, his smile slightly apologetic but genuine. In any other context, I might have pulled away, uncomfortable with the unexpected contact. But there was something about him, something about the moment, that made me tighten my grip instead of letting go. "I lost my friend," I explained, leaning closer so he could hear me over the music. "We got separated in the crowd." He nodded in understanding, his hand still firmly holding mine. "I'm Eli," he introduced himself, somehow making this small exchange feel intimate despite having to shout to be heard. "Alex," I responded, surprised by how natural it felt to be having this conversation with a stranger while surrounded by thousands of people. "Don't worry, we'll find your friend after the set. But for now, let me make sure you don't get crushed." His concern seemed so genuine that I couldn't help but trust him. And so we stood there, two strangers connected by clasped hands, as the midnight echoes played through their set. Gradually, my anxiety about being separated from Jordan began to fade, replaced by a different kind of awareness, the awareness of Eli's presence beside me. The way he moved to the music, the occasional glances we exchanged, the shared smiles when the band played something particularly moving. There was something undeniably magnetic about him, a quality I couldn't quite name but felt drawn to nonetheless. During a slower song, the crowd's energy shifted, becoming less frantic and more swaying. Eli leaned closer to me, his breath warm against my ear. "This is my favorite song of theirs," he said, and I felt a little jolt of connection. "Mine too," I admitted, and the smile he gave me in response made my heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with the music. We sang along together, our voices joining thousands of others, but somehow feeling like a private conversation between just the two of us. As the set progressed, I found myself less focused on finding Jordan and more invested in this unexpected connection. Eli never let go of my hand, not even when the crowd's pressure eased. Instead, our fingers remained intertwined, a physical manifestation of the invisible thread that seemed to be forming between us. When the band announced their final song, I felt a surprising pang of disappointment, not just because the amazing performance was ending, but because I wasn't ready for this moment with Eli to be over. The final notes of the song hung in the air, and as the crowd erupted in applause, Eli turned to me with a look of pure joy that mirrored what I was feeling. "That was incredible," he said, and I nodded in agreement, unable to find words that would adequately express the experience. As people began to disperse, moving toward other stages or taking a break before the next performance, we remained connected, our hands still joined as if by mutual unspoken agreement. "We should try to find your friend," Eli suggested, his sense of responsibility touching me. "What do they look like?" I described Jordan, medium height, curly hair, wearing a blue tie-dyed shirt, and we began to navigate through the thinning crowd. There was something surreal about walking hand in hand with someone I just met, searching for my best friend amid thousands of festival-goers. Yet it felt right somehow, as if this was exactly how the day was meant to unfold. We made our way to the designated meeting spot our group had agreed upon earlier, a distinctive art installation near the center of the festival grounds. As we approached, I spotted Jordan standing with Taylor and Riley, all three looking concerned as they scanned the crowd. "There they are," I said to Eli, feeling relief wash over me. When Jordan saw me, their face lit up with similar relief, quickly followed by curiosity as they noticed I wasn't alone and that I was holding hands with a stranger. "Alex, we were so worried," Jordan exclaimed, pulling me into a quick hug. "The crowd got so intense, and then none of us could find you." I explained what had happened, how Eli had appeared at just the right moment and kept me from being overwhelmed by the crowd. As I spoke, I realized I was still holding his hand, and while part of me felt self-conscious about this in front of my friends, a stronger part couldn't bring myself to let go. Jordan gave Eli an appraising look, then extended a hand. "Thanks for looking out for Alex. I'm Jordan." The rest of the introductions followed, and I watched with growing warmth as Eli easily integrated himself into our group conversation. There was no awkwardness, no sense of intrusion, just a natural expansion of our circle to include this person who had so unexpectedly entered my life. When Morgan and Casey joined us a few minutes later, the process repeated, and soon Eli was laughing along with an inside joke as if he'd been part of our group all along. As the afternoon progressed into evening, our group moved between stages, catching performances from various artists on our collective must-see list. Throughout it all, Eli stayed by my side, our hands finding each other naturally whenever we moved through crowded areas. During one particularly packed performance, he stood behind me, his arms wrapped protectively around my waist, his chest warm against my back as we swayed to the music. I leaned into him, allowing myself to enjoy the closeness, the sense of safety and excitement his presence provided. During a break between sets, our group decided to grab food from the various vendors scattered throughout the festival grounds. As we walked, Eli gently pulled me slightly apart from the others. "I hope this isn't weird," he said, suddenly looking less confident than he had all day. "Me joining your group like this. I can go if you'd rather." The vulnerability in his expression made something tighten in my chest. "No," I said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "I want you to stay, unless you have friends you need to get back to." Eli's smile returned, brightening his entire face. "I came with a couple of friends, but we always do our own thing during festivals. We check in with texts now and then. They're probably happy I'm not third-wheeling them for once." This revelation, that he was, in a sense, as alone as I had been in that crowd, created another point of connection between us. "Then stay," I said simply, and the look he gave me in response made me feel like I'd given him something precious. As the day turned to evening and the festival lights came on, transforming the grounds into a magical landscape of color and shadow, our connection deepened through shared experiences and conversations stolen in quieter moments. I learned that Eli was a graphic designer who worked remotely, allowing him to travel frequently. He discovered my passion for environmental science and my dream of working on conservation projects. We exchanged stories about previous concerts, favorite albums, embarrassing music phases we'd gone through as teenagers. Each revelation, each shared laugh or moment of recognition, felt like building blocks in something I wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny was happening. The headline act of the evening was about to take the main stage, and our group secured a spot with a good view, far enough from the front to avoid the most intense crowd pressure, but close enough to feel fully immersed in the experience. As the lights dimmed and the crowd roared in anticipation, Eli stood beside me, our shoulders touching. "Thank you," he said softly, his words almost lost in the ambient noise. "For what?" I asked, turning to look at him. The festival lights played across his features, highlighting the sincerity in his expression. "For not letting go," he answered, and I knew he meant more than just our physically linked hands. The headliner's performance was everything I'd hoped for, powerful, moving, the kind of show that becomes a core memory. But what made it truly special was experiencing it with Eli. The way we moved together, the shared glances during particularly meaningful lyrics, the feeling of his arm around my shoulders during the slower songs. It all combined to create something that transcended the music itself. When the band played their most famous love song, Eli turned to face me, his expression open and vulnerable in a way that made my breath catch. "I know this is crazy," he said, his voice low but clear enough for me to hear. "We just met, but I feel like there's something here, something real. Am I imagining it?" The honesty of his question demanded equal honesty in return. I shook my head, my heart racing. "You're not imagining it. I feel it too." The relief and joy that spread across his face mirrored what I was feeling. This strange, wonderful certainty that something significant was happening between us, something worth exploring despite the unconventional circumstances of our meeting. In that moment, with the music swelling around us and the collective energy of thousands of people creating a backdrop of pure emotion, Eli leaned forward. His intention was clear, giving me every opportunity to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. Instead, I closed the distance between us, and our lips met in a kiss that somehow felt both completely surprising and absolutely inevitable. His hand came up to cup my face gently, and I felt myself melting into the contact, Everything else, the crowd, the music, even my friends nearby, fading into the background. When we finally pulled apart, I was aware of Jordan watching us with a knowing smile, but I couldn't bring myself to feel embarrassed. What was happening between Eli and me felt too genuine, too important to be diminished by self-consciousness. The rest of the headliners set past in a blur of music and emotion, Eli and I existing in our own bubble within the larger experience, connected not just by our intertwined fingers, but by something deeper that was rapidly taking root. As the final encore ended and the crowd began to disperse, reality started to reassert itself. The festival would continue for 2 more days, but eventually it would end. And then what? Eli seemed to sense my thoughts, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "I know what you're thinking," he said as we walked with our group back toward the camping area. "What happens when the festival ends?" I nodded, grateful that he understood without me having to voice my concerns. "I live in Portland," he continued. "Where are you based?" "Seattle," I replied, feeling a surge of hope. "That's only a 3-hour drive." The relief on his face was palpable. "We can make that work," he said with confidence, and I found myself believing him. Distance wasn't insignificant, but it wasn't insurmountable either, especially not when compared to the connection we'd established in just 1 day. "I'd like that," I admitted, allowing myself to imagine possibilities beyond the festival grounds. Weekend visits, long drives with carefully curated playlists, getting to know each other in the context of regular life rather than this heightened festival reality. Back at the campsite, our group gathered around a portable fire pit, sharing drinks and recounting highlights from the day's performances. Eli fit seamlessly into the dynamic, contributing his own observations and laughing at the right moments. Watching him interact with my friends, seeing the easy way he engaged with each person, only strengthened my growing feelings. This wasn't just about physical attraction or the magic of a music festival. There was something substantial here, something worth pursuing. As the night deepened and conversations began to wind down, people gradually retreated to their tents. Jordan gave me a significant look before disappearing into ours, a silent communication that they would make themselves scarce if needed. Eli and I remained by the dying embers of the fire, neither of us quite ready to end the day. "I should probably check in with my friends," he said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "But I don't want to go." "Then don't," I suggested, surprised by my own boldness. "Stay? We can make room in our tent." The implication hung in the air between us, not necessarily sexual, but undeniably intimate. The prospect of falling asleep beside each other, of waking up together to another day of music and connection. Eli's expression softened. "Are you sure? I don't want to presume anything or rush this." His consideration only made me more certain. "I'm sure," I confirmed. "Whatever this is, I want to see where it goes. And right now, that means not saying goodnight just yet." After Eli sent a quick text to his friends, we crawled into the tent where Jordan had thoughtfully rearranged the sleeping bags to create space for our guest. There was an initial awkwardness as we navigated the confined space, but it quickly dissolved into quiet laughter and whispered conversations. Lying side by side in the darkness, with the distant sounds of the festival still audible, music from the late-night stages, laughter and conversations from neighboring campsites, we continued to learn about each other. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Eli whispered, his face barely visible in the dim light filtering through the tent fabric. I thought for a moment, then shared a fear I usually kept hidden, my worry that my passion for environmental work would never translate into meaningful change, that I was pouring my heart into a losing battle. Instead of offering platitudes, Eli listened deeply, then shared his own fears about creative stagnation, about the gap between the work he did to pay bills and the art he longed to create. There was something profoundly connecting about this exchange of vulnerabilities, this mutual trust established in less than a day. As exhaustion from the day's events finally caught up with us, our conversation slowed, replaced by comfortable silence and the gradual relaxation of bodies preparing for sleep. Eli's arm wrapped around me, my head finding a perfect resting place on his shoulder. "I'm really glad you grabbed my hand today," I murmured, already half dreaming. His response was a gentle kiss pressed to my forehead and a whispered "me too" that followed me into sleep. The next morning brought sunlight filtering through the tent walls, and the sounds of the festival coming back to life. I woke to find Eli already awake, watching me with a soft expression that made my heart flutter despite morning breath and sleep-mussed hair. "Hi," he said simply, and somehow that single word contained multitudes. "Hi yourself," I responded, marveling at how natural it felt to wake up beside him. How right. The second day of the festival unfolded like an extension of the magic that had begun the first day. Our group, now including Eli as if he'd always been part of it, moved between stages and experiences with the easy rhythm of people comfortable in each other's company. But there was also the added dimension of my growing connection with Eli, hands that never seemed to separate for long, stolen kisses during quieter moments, the constant awareness of his presence beside me like a warm current of electricity. During one performance, as we danced together in a less crowded area of the field, Eli pulled me close and said something that resonated deeply. "You know what I love about festivals? They compress time. Outside of here, it might take weeks or months to feel this connected to someone. But in this space, with the music and the shared experience, everything accelerates. It's like we get to skip ahead to the good part." I understood exactly what he meant. There was a purity to our connection, unencumbered by the usual social conventions and timelines. We were getting to know each other in this heightened reality, emotions amplified by the music and the collective energy surrounding us. As the festival continued, our bond deepened through shared experiences, dancing in the rain during an unexpected shower, helping a lost child find the festival's information tent, lying on the grass during a break between sets, and pointing out shapes in the clouds. Each moment added another layer to what was developing between us, another confirmation that this wasn't just festival magic or temporary infatuation. On the final day, as the closing act prepared to take the stage, there was a bittersweet quality to our excitement. The festival was ending, which meant our bubble was about to burst. Real life was waiting on the other side. Jobs, responsibilities, the 3-hour distance between our cities. Sensing my thoughts, Eli took both my hands in his, turning me to face him directly. "This doesn't end today," he said with quiet certainty. "What we started here, it continues. If you want it to." The vulnerability beneath his confidence was touching. "I do want it to," I assured him, realizing as I spoke just how true those words were. In 3 days, Eli had become important to me in a way I hadn't anticipated, a connection I wasn't willing to dismiss as a festival fling. "We'll make it work," I added, echoing his earlier confidence. 3 hours isn't so far. The smile that spread across his face was worth any amount of future commuting, any logistical challenges we might face. As the final notes of the closing performance faded into the night and the crowd began the slow process of dispersal, Eli and I stood with our foreheads touching, reluctant to join the exodus just yet. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" I asked, echoing our exchange from earlier. His smile was gentle, his eyes holding mine. "For letting me hold on." And I understood he meant more than just our hands. He was thanking me for allowing this connection to form, for being open to the possibility of us despite the unconventional beginning. The next morning brought the inevitable dismantling of tents, packing of cars, and exchanges of contact information. Eli's friends came to meet our group, leading to another round of introductions and good-natured teasing about Eli's festival romance. But there was no embarrassment in being labeled as such, only a shared understanding between Eli and me that what we'd found was both more complex and more promising than a simple holiday fling. When the moment of departure finally arrived, Eli pulled me aside for a private goodbye. "I'll call you tonight," he promised, his hands framing my face with gentle intention. "And I'll drive up to Seattle next weekend, if that works for you." The certainty in his voice, the concrete plans rather than vague intentions, reassured me that this wasn't ending. "I'd like that," I said, leaning into his touch. Our goodbye kiss was both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of our festival chapter and the opening of whatever came next. As I watched Eli walk toward his friend's car, I felt Jordan's presence beside me. "So," they said, bumping their shoulder against mine. That happened. There was no judgment in their tone, only affectionate amusement and perhaps a hint of genuine happiness for me. "Yeah," I agreed, unable to keep the smile from my face. It really did. And as we got into our own car and began the journey home, I found myself filled with gratitude for the crowd that had separated me from my friends, for the hand that had grabbed mine in that moment of chaos, and for the connection that had formed from that simple act of not letting go. The festival had ended, but the music, our music, was just beginning. And I couldn't wait to hear what came next. Total_char_count, 17,842.